Hello Facebook, my name is Evie Burke and I am the mindset mentor and success coach at One Insight Closer. And what I do is I help entrepreneurs who are struggling with overwhelm and productivity and focus. I help them take their productivity to a new level so that when they're at home at the end of the day, they're not spending their time worried about what didn't get done today or what needs to be done tomorrow, but instead they can really be present with their loved ones. So today's topic, this is Facebook Live number 10, or Wednesdays Live with Evie number 10. And today's topic is around creating habits and our excuses around those. So I know I have lots of excuses. And so today I'm going to talk about how to create habits, how to change habits. I'm going to answer a question that someone posed in the Facebook group, Productivity for Women Entrepreneurs. If that sounds interesting to you, if that group sounds interesting, request to join over there. It's a private group and it is free, and I would love to have you there if you're not there already. So I'll answer a question someone posted there around habits and the difference between well, I'll tell you more about that question in a little bit. And then I'll share where I am with the habit that I took on this week that I've shared with the Facebook group. So while I'm waiting for Facebook Live to kind of get some more people here, I'm going to share it a couple of places so that more people see it. So normally, this is the point where I have something else to share with you. And I don't think I really have anything additional to share with you today. Let's see. Last week I shared that one of the habits I needed to create, or not habits, routines, because last week we were talking about routines. I shared that I needed a routine around, here we go, that's the button I want. I needed a routine around setting up for this event because it involved, the 10 minutes before up and down 2 flights of stairs about 3 or 4 times. And I'm happy to say that that did not happen today. I was much more focused and on task. I guess you could say maybe on task. I knew the things that I needed to do, and I had them set up well enough in advance that I wasn't completely sidetracked. So let me just share this one more place. Actually 2 more places. So for those of you who are on, I would love to know what habits maybe do you want to create? And just say hi. So whether you're watching the replay or you're here live, say hi. And so I know you're here. And let me know what questions you have about productivity that I can answer. No, I'm trying to share it into the event. Okay, that doesn't appear to be working. Let me try. Okay, that doesn't appear to be working. And then you hear duplicates of what I'm saying. Alright, so if I go back home. There we go. All right. Oh, hey Betty. Hey Mary. No one's late. I was just sharing it around and trying to figure out how to share it the way I wanted to. All right. So we'll get started now. So, Betty says she wants the habits she's looking to create are being upbeat no matter what, walking daily. Those are great. So, so the first topic here, the first thing I wanted to talk about, if you see me looking down, as always, I'm just looking at my notes. So I always write out a couple of things that I want to share with you guys so that I'm not just completely rambling and off script the whole time, because given a chance, I can get pretty rambling. So the first topic here is creating new habits. And I know I've talked about this before. It might have been on a YouTube video I did. I'm not sure. If you're looking to create habits, there's a book called, I believe it's The Power of Habits. I don't exactly remember the name. I just remember it's a yellow book. And it has a fabulous walkthrough of kind of how our brain works and how they work with habits. So a lot of what I'm sharing about habits and habit triggers and things like that, those come from my understanding of what I read through that book. And I'll go and find the title of the book exactly, and I'll share that below. But I just wanted to give a little credit where credit's due, so you know where I'm getting some of my information. So when you're creating habits, one of the things you want to know to do is be very specific in what the habit is you're creating, and know why you're creating the habit. So sometimes that's important, not only because it helps us it helps us evaluate, how the habit's going. Is it something that we want to change? And it can help us be very generous maybe with ourselves when something doesn't maybe go as planned. So for example, someone in the Facebook group shared that she wanted to be taking breaks at work, and so she had specifically listed, this is the break that I want to take, because I can't just work a whole day without having some discomfort the next day. And she shared in the group that yesterday she wasn't able to do the specific task that she wanted to do because a friend came over, and it just kind of threw the whole day into a tizzy. Things that she wanted to get done didn't get done. And I asked her, and I haven't had a response yet, but I wondered if the visit of the friend served the same purpose, where it gave her a break from her work. And in that way, she can be a little more lenient with herself about, the intention of the habit was fulfilled, even if the specific way that she was thinking it was going to manifest, or that she wanted it to manifest, it didn't. So that's not to say that you want to be super easy with yourself all of the time. And when you're setting a habit, it is super important to know, what specifically you want to do, so that, when the end of the day comes, you can say, was I successful or not? You have a specific task where you're saying, okay, this is what I want to do, this is why I want to do it, and then you can go do it, versus saying, okay, I wanted to give myself a break during the day, did I do it? That's a lot harder to do if you're not being very specific with it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So again, going through the steps of creating a habit, know what you want to create and why you want to create it, and be really specific. Why do you want to create the habit? What are you going to gain by having that habit? What are your reasons? And be super honest with yourself. No one else is going to look at this and say, oh, that's a terrible reason to create a habit, or, that's really selfish. Good for you. Your habits should be a little selfish. They should serve you, right? So be very clear with what you're creating and why you're creating it. And then, because I love specifics, when are you going to do it? So what's the habit? When are you going to do it? Schedule it into your day if you can, so that you know that this is the habit I want to create, and this is when I do it each day. Or, Wednesday, it didn't work out to do it the way that I've been doing it the rest of the week, so instead I'm going to do it at this time. Whatever that is, make sure you're very clear about the when and the where, right? When you're going to do it, where you're going to do it. Paint that picture. Make it really clear what you're doing, and walk through when and what you're doing in your head. So one of the things you can do is create a little formula for it. So like, when this happens, I'll do that. So what you're looking to create here is kind of a trigger for the habit. When I'm finished eating lunch, I'm going to go change and go for a walk. After I have breakfast in the morning, whatever it is for you, like, when this happens, I'm going to do that. All right? And then really walk yourself through that process about how that's going to go, and really paint that picture in your head. And that will make it easier, because you've already started to create those pathways in your brain about how this is going to work. And then when it comes time to actually do it, it's not like your brain is trying to figure out, okay, what do I do next? Like, you've already told your brain each step that you're going to take, and so it doesn't have to think about it. And that's super good. And if you've already walked yourself through all the steps, you can maybe see some of the things you need to do to set yourself up for success, right? And set those things up beforehand. And another thing to think about is what might get in the way. So what might stop you up? So like Betty said, walking daily. I know one of the thing that I took on is walking outside every day. So I didn't do this because I knew the weather this week was going to be good, but one of the things I probably want to think about is, what if it's raining out? What if it's really cold out? What then? What am I going to do? Am I going to just not walk? Am I going to what am I going to do then, right? So what's going to get in the way of completing that habit, of doing that habit every day? And think about, if that happens, then I'll do this. So again, you're thinking through the things that might get in the way beforehand. So, if Mary says, what if the ground's icy? So, if you're thinking through those things and in advance, okay, if it's raining out, this is my backup plan, then it's not like it's raining out and now you have to think about, okay, like, I want to go and I want to walk, so what am I going to do? What are my options? If you've already thought those things through, then all you have to do is do the backup plan, right? And I know that sometimes it's a lot easier said than done, but so think about those things. All right, so that's creating a habit, thinking about what habit you're going to add, identifying it really clearly. What are you going to do, how long, all of those details, and then why you want to create the habit. When will you do it? So when that happens, I'll do this. And what might get in the way? How are you going to handle that? If this happens, then I'll do that, that type of thing. So I'm just going to check over here to see if there's any. Nope. Okay. Just wanted to make sure there weren't comments in other places. Okay. What Betty's saying is it works for her to walk indoors around the entire house for a given amount of time. Yeah. So good. You know what some of your alternatives are. That's great. All right. So now for changing a habit. Changing a habit is similar-ish to creating a habit, because again, you want to be very specific about the habit that you're changing, what you're moving from, and what you're moving to. And there's some steps in there in between, but some of the things that are the same is know what you're moving from, know what you're moving to, so going through the steps for creating a habit. One of the things, though, for changing a habit is knowing what the trigger for the habit is. So if you're changing a habit, you want to know what is the thing right before the habit. So maybe you find yourself in Target and you always end up in maybe the dollar spot, or for me it would be the office supply section. And anytime you find yourself there, you end up going out with something that you don't need. And you want to change that habit. So in that case, The trigger is the location, right? The trigger is you're at Target and you're in the office supplies section or the one spot, or, you know, whatever it is for you, right? And you don't want to buy something. So there's two ways to approach this. You can just try sheer willpower and say, when I find myself in that situation, I won't buy anything. Or if you know the trigger is you're in that section, maybe you change your route and you don't go to that section, right? So when you walk into Target, you say, okay, instead of going, turning left and taking the route I normally do, maybe you go straight or you turn right and you take another route that doesn't take you by that. So then you're avoiding that trigger, right? You're changing up the routine a bit so that the habit of purchasing pens you don't need, not that I would ever do that, you don't find yourself in that section, right? So identify the trigger and decide, you know, what you want your response to be instead. So one example might be, another thing to think about is, let's say the habit is at 3 o'clock you always find yourself having a snack and you want to cut out that snack. So you might want to look at, okay, what's the trigger there? Why at 3 o'clock do I want a snack? Is it because I'm hungry? Is it because I'm bored? Is it because I'm tired? You know, what's that reason? Because you might say, you know, instead of having that cookie for a snack, instead I'm going to warm myself up some broccoli. And then you get down to the kitchen and you're like, broccoli, it's just so much easier to have, you know, that cookie. Or, you know, yeah, I could have that handful of nuts, but I really have a sweet tooth right now. So if you know what the trigger is, if it's because you're tired, maybe instead of going down to the kitchen, maybe you do a lap around the house. Maybe you do some jumping jacks. Maybe you just take a break and do something else, or call a friend and talk to them for a little bit, or whatever it is, you know. Instead of going and having that cookie, you know, if you're bored, you do something else, or you set your day up a little bit differently. If you're legitimately hungry, maybe you keep some healthy snacks in your office instead of the cookies, you know, down in the kitchen. You know, if you know what that trigger is, then you can take some more calculated or thoughtful steps around how you want to handle the reaction that you have to that trigger, right? So, and once you know those things, again, like I said, go through the steps for creating a new habit. So now, one of the questions on the Facebook group, and I'm going to read it out, is, I'm just going to read it specifically. The question from the Facebook group was, when you quit a habit, why is it easier to go back to a bad habit than to a good one? So for instance, I quit smoking a number of times before I quit for good in the 90s. I also have quit exercising a number of times due to injuries or other things coming up. I found it difficult to not do the bad habit like smoking, but once you get off of a regular schedule, it's so easy to put off going back to the gym just one more day. And then she says, or am I getting habit and addiction confused? So I answered that in the group, and I want to address it a little bit here because I think it'd be helpful. Yes, smoking is definitely an addiction and a habit. So because it's the addiction part, there's also like that physical chemical need to smoke, right? So there's that additional piece to address, that changing a habit is only going to do part of it. And I'm not a smoking, I can't remember the term, but I'm not an expert in quitting smoking, so I'm not the person to ask about how to do that. But I think what's at the core of the question is the difference of something like maybe picking, like if you're nervous, chewing at your fingernails or picking at your fingernails, and exercising. So there's different triggers for those things, right? So the trigger for chewing at your fingernails is an emotional trigger generally, right? You're stressed out or you're nervous and you pick at your fingernails or you chew at your nails. And that's different than a habit like getting up and going exercising, whether it's in the morning or in the day. You know, those things are set up very differently in our heads. And when I say in our heads, I'm thinking about the neural pathways that we've built in our brains. So with picking at your nails or something like that, when the trigger is something like stress, that requires something different, right? So there's a couple of different ways you can address a habit like picking at your nails. And that might be when you feel stressed out, you handle it a different way. So you want, changing that reaction and deciding I want to do something else, right? And that can still be very difficult. So it requires a lot of awareness. The other way to handle that trigger and response of chewing at your nails, being stressed and chewing at your nails, is addressing the stress itself and reducing that trigger. So it might be when you feel stressed out, you take some deep breaths, and that might be, it lessens your stress and it gives you something else to do other than, chew at your fingernails or pick at your nails or whatever it is, right? While a habit like exercising, that's set up differently in our brains, I'm guessing. I know that for me, growing up, it wasn't something that, it wasn't something that you did. It's not something that, I saw my parents, get up in the morning and go to the gym to exercise. I grew up in a tiny, tiny town of like 600, 500 people, right? There was no gym within 20 minutes of us or even a half hour of us. There was nothing like that around. In good weather, I would see my mom and her best friend go for walks, but it wasn't something that was part of my everyday life. So I think when you're trying to add those things in, you're trying to create something new. And when you're going and exercising, there's some steps there, right? There's changing, if you're going to a gym, driving yourself to the gym, deciding what you're going to do. Like, there's a lot of decisions in that. So again, if you're looking to create a habit like that, you really want to play all of those details out in your head before you go. And also, when you stop going for a while, you've created a new habit, right? So maybe you were exercising in the morning, and so the routine was to get up in the morning, have a bite to eat, you changed into your workout clothes, and then went to the gym. But now you've created a new routine, a new set of habits where it doesn't include going to the gym, and you have to look at how do you change your current habits, how do you change your current routines to add that back in. And I don't know how to describe the difference. I hope you kind of get the difference between having that emotional stress response over here and having the going to the gym response where the trigger has to be something completely different. And I think that's why those things are so difficult for us. Does that answer the question? Does anybody have any questions about what I just said? Because it kind of makes sense in my head, and I want to make sure that you guys got it, that I didn't talk myself in circles a bunch. I know there's a delay on this, so I'll give it just a second to pop up. And while I'm waiting for responses, I'll just see if there's any comments in other places. I don't see any. Well, I'll look and see if there's any comments in a little bit. So, the second part of habits are our excuses. So, if you saw my blog post, my article at the beginning of the week, you'll see what my habit was. So my habit that I wanted to add this week was walking. It's something that, like, my soul craves being outside. I love the outdoors. Like I said, I grew up in a really small town where you drove a half hour through cornfields to get anywhere. And it was a time where you didn't have iPads or screens to look at to keep yourself entertained, you know, on the way there. We went once a month up to my grandparents in Wisconsin, where it was just beautiful scenery going up there, and it was a 2.5 hour drive, and we went at least once a month when the weather was good, right? And it just, both of my grandparents lived on farms, you know, where the nearest neighbor was a mile or half a mile at least away. And that's such a part of who I am, is being in nature. When I was working in Addison, and I live in Aurora, one of the ways I used to take, and it maybe added a minute or two to my commute, which doesn't seem like a lot, but sometimes when you're already commuting for 45 minutes one direction, sometimes you're like, oh, I just want to be home. But I would add that couple of minutes to my commute, because the route that I ended up taking for a majority of the time, it took me through an area where it was a bike path with lots of trees on one side and a subdivision behind it, and on the other side it was forest preserve and swamp and things like that. But it was in the middle of my drive, and it just calmed me down, you know, because the rest of it was city driving. And just that brief, you know, halfway through my drive to be going through the trees, it just felt so good. So, that's really important to me, and I haven't been spending a lot of time outdoors, but I had a lot of excuses about why I should and shouldn't do it. And I shared some of those in the Facebook group, things like, it just takes too much time. Not the Facebook group, I shared it in the article. It takes too much time. I don't want to do it in the middle of the day because, you know, that's my work day and that'll be a disruption. You know, lots of excuses around it. And yet it was something that I really wanted to do. So, full disclosure, that's actually one of the reasons why the topic this week is habits, is because I knew if I made the topic habits, then I could put the challenge out to my Facebook group, what habits do you want to create? And I could add the habit I wanted to create, the habit that I wanted to add, and they would hold me accountable. I was setting it up so that I really needed to be on top of it and doing it every day, regardless of what the excuses were. So, I guess here my point is, if it's something you really want to do, even though you have lots of excuses around it, find a way to try it out for a week. Whether it's just calling a girlfriend and say, hey, can you check in with me every day to see if I've done this? Or I'll check in with you, and if I don't, will you reach out to me and ask how it's going? Or, you know, posting in the productivity group, the Productivity for Women Entrepreneurs, and saying, hey, this is something I want to do. Even if we're not doing a challenge that week on habits and you want to add a new habit, just post to the group, hey, I want to create this habit this week. I'll update every day here, and if I don't, can you reach out to me? Or can you post here and ask how it's going? You're welcome to do that. The group is there to support you, so if that's what supports you, post that away. We'd love to hear it. So the thing with excuses, though, are they're very tricky, aren't they? Because we think they're reasons. We think these are all of the reasons why I should or I shouldn't do something. And when you really take a step back and you look at it, they're just excuses to keep doing what you're doing. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes you need to look at it and really decide, how committed am I to this, this habit, to this thing I want to do? Do I not want to do it because it legitimately will disrupt my schedule? Or do I not want to do it because it forces me to adjust something that I've just gotten really comfortable with? So look at your comfort zone. Is it a comfort zone thing, or is it a legitimate reason? And, you know, be brutally honest with yourself, because sometimes those legitimate reasons, they're not. So I'm noticing I'm going kind of long here, so I'm going to wrap that up. I'm just going to give you, okay, I want to go back and look at what Betty said about, oh, and when I was talking about the emotional triggers versus other triggers, one of the things she says, sometimes with emotional triggers, it's really difficult to anticipate what we're going to do before we get too far into that territory. And I think, yeah, Betty, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's a process of trial and error, and that's really why this habit challenge that I did in the Facebook group is a week-long challenge, because you can try it out for a week and then you can adjust as necessary. I'm really thirsty from all the talking, so just give me a second here. So, and I think sometimes that's another thing we forget, is when we want to add a habit, you can adjust as necessary. So if something's not working for you, adjust it. You know, you're not married to it. Try it for a week consistently, you know, and see what works and what doesn't, and then adjust it, you know, try something different. If it didn't go exactly the way you were hoping, you know, try something else. So, excuse me. The last thing I wanted to do was just give you a quick update on my walking habit. So my commitment, as I said, was to get outside and walk for at least 15 minutes every day. And I've done it Monday and Tuesday. I have yet to do it today. So I'm actually going to have a late lunch after I get off of the call here. And then I haven't decided if I'm going to walk around the neighborhood yet, or if I'm going to head out to the Fox River and walk there, which is where I've been walking. So I will decide that in the next probably half hour, 45 minutes, and I'll post to the Facebook group when I'm finished and let you know. I have a 4 o'clock appointment and a couple of things to do, so part of it's just going to depend on, what my time frame looks like, because it's about 15-20 minute round trip over to the Fox River, which is a beautiful place to go and walk if you're close enough to go and do that. So any other questions or anything before I sign off here? Let me know type them in there. So whether you're watching live or, you know, you're catching the replay, you know, feel free to type any questions you have. And if there's anything that you need support with, if there's any habit you're looking to create, that you kind of want to flesh out, I encourage you to head over to the Facebook group, Productivity for Women Entrepreneurs. It's a free group. It's private. Request to join, and I'll add you over there if you're of the female persuasion. And, you know, post to the group, and I'll help you kind of flesh that out, or I'm sure one of the other ladies might also have some other suggestions and ideas. It's a great group of ladies there. And yeah, so if you have, okay, so 2 things for the Facebook group. So Productivity for Women Entrepreneurs. If you have a habit you want to add, you know, let us know what that is. Or if you have an idea and you want some help fleshing that out, post that too. Excuse me. So, I believe that will bring us to a close today. So this was Wednesday Live with Evie, number 10, Creating Habits and Our Excuses. Excuse me. And I will see you next week. Have a great day.